that stuff. And so anyway, there's this tribal identity, and so it's not that big of a move then for them to split.
Right.
I mean, it is and it isn't. So it's kind of like you've got the tribe of Judah and then all the other tribes.
Yeah.
And so what do we call all the other tribes? Well, they just call them Israel.
Yeah.
Because it's really just Israel minus Judah.
Right.
And so that's what's happening here is that there's always kind of been this tension, and now now it's all coming out.
Right.
This is it's been we've had enough of the Judahites. We've had enough of them telling, all of our money going to their city, Jerusalem, and all of our labor, all of our people working, and now they want to work us harder under this guy Rehoboam now.
Right.
And we've had enough. And so then the original question you asked was about, what is the word, Jew, Jewish, where does that come from, right?
Yeah.
Well, at this point now you've got Judahites and Israelites. And if you're in the southern kingdom, you're a Judahite. Northern kingdom, you're an Israelite.
Okay.
And that's what develops. During the Babylonian captivity, the only ones they take into captivity is Judah. Because 100 years prior, the Assyrians came in and they wiped out the Israelites.
Yeah.
So at that point, there really weren't any more Israelites, at least not by cultural identity.
Right.
I mean, there were still some there. They left some work in the land. They took some, but they really wiped out a lot of them.
Right.
And so really the ones that maintain their identity are the Judahites.
Okay.
Now, they go to Babylon, around 600 BC, and in three different waves, and they come back, and under the Persians, and then through the Greek conquests, they had this name for this area of land, Judah, which is this ancient kingdom, but now it's just a province in Alexander's empire.
Right.
And they called it Judea.
Okay.
And that's where. And so if you lived in the province of Judea, what are you called? Well, Uos, right? Judeos, right?
Yeah.
Or you're a Jew, right?
Okay.
And that's where that word finally comes from.
So it wasn't the Romans; it was the Persians.
Yeah, it was well, it's weird because like Esther is in the court of Persia, and they call her a Jew. But that's probably written a little bit later after her.
Yeah.
Maybe during the time of the Greeks or something, or at least they're like revised during the time of the Greeks, and so that might be slightly anachronistic. So yeah,
Okay.
either during the time of the Persians or during the time of the Greeks. But even before that, I mean, really, Jew and Judahite, they mean the same thing.
Right.
The only difference is linguistic,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, they're basically the same thing.
So the Greeks did have control over Israel?
Oh
or
yeah,
Judah?
oh yeah. That's and you see you don't see that in the Old Testament. You miss the
Right.
Greek portion because that's in the apocryphal books. You see that in First and Second Maccabees,
Okay.
and First and Second Maccabees all about Greek rule over Judea.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
fascinating.
yeah, you had mentioned Maccabees in the sermon one time, and I looked it up a little bit, but I didn't
Yeah.
read much of it.
Yeah, it's
Right,
fascinating. I highly recommend. I mean, I always say when people ask me if they should read, I say, well, read the other 66 books first.
Yeah.
And then once you've done those, read First and Second Maccabees. It's they're not canon, they're not authoritative for our belief, but they're really helpful. They've been a part of the church for a long time.
Right.
Paul's Greek Bible had First and Second Maccabees in it, and I think I led a study on Second Maccabees once.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. People loved it, and it's all about the rule, the Greek rule over Judea, and they've got the Greeks had conquered. Alexander had conquered Egypt, and the Ptolemies were Greeks, and they're ruling Egypt in the south, and then the Seleucids out east were ruling, the Persia, and
Yeah.
it really what happens is. The Seleucids and the Ptolemies would go to war with each other. They're both Greek, Greek
Right.
rulers, but they'd go to war with each other, and who's caught right in the middle? Judea.
Okay.
That's their kind of what. And then you had the Greeks are trying to Hellenize the Jewish kids So they're setting up gymnasia schools
Yeah.
to try to turn them into good Greeks.
Okay, yeah.
And then the Jews are like, no, you're not going to do that to our kids. And so, I mean, and it's a very, I think, in a lot of ways, very timely. Second Maccabees is fascinating. There's some weird stuff in there too, like the fire from the temple. The temple altar, the fire was preserved over the course of the 70-year exile in some like molten magma weird thing, and they come back and they light it again. And so the fire has been, preserved this whole
burned
time.
the whole time, yeah.
And there's, when they go to battle, I think at some point an angel comes out, or maybe some angels come out of the sky and help the Maccabees in their battle, and they give the Greeks what they call a heavenly flogging. It's kind of this wild stuff.
Right. Sounds like a 1940s novel.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I mean, it's fun. And then there are some things that were kept and were like regarded very highly, like the story in Second Maccabees 7 of the seven brothers and their mother who were martyred under Antiochus.
That was the story.
That's what I used.
Yeah.
Right. So because Jesus, when he's talking to the Sadducees and they challenge him about the resurrection, that's the basis of their challenge.
Right.
They use that story to challenge him. They just tweak it a little bit in their challenge. And so, I think it helps to understand the New Testament. I mean, that's where you get Hanukkah. Jesus celebrates Hanukkah in the Gospel of John, right? I mean, so anyways, but all of this stuff, this divide is going to lead into that.
Okay.
So really, to understand first century AD Judea, it's good to have like what we're reading here in First and Second Kings, and then First and Second Maccabees. You see how Israel comes apart.
Yeah.
And where they're at, by the time Jesus rolls around. I was thinking of that, just to stay on that same thing real quickly. I want to go to 1 Kings chapter 12.
Okay.
Because that just reminded me of that here. Something, and I want to read. This is verse 25 and following. This is Jeroboam when he is set up as king. Okay, this is what happens. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. And he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, "Now the kingdom will turn back to the house of David. If this people go up to offer sacrifices in the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah." So he's scared now that they're all upset and they've divided, and he's been anointed king over the northern tribes. But he says, but the moment they start going back to Jerusalem to offer their sacrifices, they are going to turn back to the king of Judah.
Right.
That's just what's going to happen, right? So it says, the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said to the people, "You have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." Now again, that's what Aaron says.
Right.
And right outside of Mount Sinai. And he set one in Bethel and the other he put in Dan. Then this thing became a sin, for the people went as far as Dan to be before one. He also made temples on high places and appointed priests from among all the people who were not of the Levites. And Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the feast that was in Judah, and he offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he made, and he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. He went up to the altar that he had made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, and the month that he had devised from his own heart, and he instituted a feast for the people of Israel and went up to the altar to make offerings. Okay, now this is really important. This is a really important development. And I'll tell you why. Because God had given them a place to worship. He had given them a calendar with feast days, as pilgrimage days, right? Okay. So what he's done is he has come up with his own high holidays.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to the 1st century AD, And you've got Judea, like we've been talking about, and all other history and the Babylonian captivity through the Greeks, the Roman conquest. It was, by the way, Pompey in like the, I think it was like 66, 67 BC when his army conquered Judea
Okay.
for the Roman Republic.
Yeah.
All right. And Pompey is like, he's the Roman general who's like the most famous frenemy, I think, of Julius Caesar. Like that's
yeah.
that's what we'll call them. They're frenemies eventually. And so I want you to think about this think about what the Judeans were doing, and then think about who lives north of them. The Samaritans.
Okay.
The Samaritans these are people that were kind of left in the land from the northern kingdom,
Yeah.
who had intermarried with a bunch of other people, okay, a bunch of different other people groups. They still held to the law of Moses, the 5 books of Moses.
Yeah.
Now, where are their high places? Where's their temple? Dan and Bethel.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
and religiously that is now their religious heritage.
Now, is that the same Bethel that was it?
There's a lot of Bethels.
Was it the one Abraham or
Is Jacob?
Jacob?
It
Yeah.
may be. I think probably
Right.
right. But there's a lot of Bethels, so
Yeah.
that's a hard. There's a lot of Bethels. There's also a lot of Bethlehems.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so this will have all kinds of different consequences for even the 1st century AD and the people that Jesus is ministering to.
Okay.
So you think of like the woman at the well in the Gospel of John who said, she's like a Samaritan, and she says, "You Jews, you worship on that mountain. We worship on this mountain.
Right.
Right? We worship in different places." But she's still a Yahwist.
Right.
Right? They still hold to the 5 books of Moses.
Right.
This is why the Jews and the Samaritans hated each other. Right? They were. It's still kind of this northern southern kingdom thing they have going.
Okay.
And not only that, but for the Jews to look at the Samaritans and say, "Oh, you've been intermingling with the peoples,
Right.
and you've got this Jeroboam religion, and you've got your high places and all this stuff, not in Jerusalem." And then the Samaritans to look at the Judeans and say, "Oh, you just think you're better than us,
Right.
because Jerusalem is so much better than everyone else, and you want us all to go down to your city, all this stuff." And this is really what's happening between the Judeans and the Samaritans,
Right.
right? And Jesus, he's asked about this. He talks about this. And where does Jesus do most of his ministry? In the region of Galilee,
Okay,
in
yeah.
Samaria.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. He's even north of Samaria in Galilee, right?
Right.
So most of his ministry is actually in this kingdom, in the northern kingdom.
Right. Okay.
And who else did their ministry in the northern kingdom? What great prophet? Elijah and Elisha,
yeah.
right? And that's what we're going to read about here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's
Right?
why I guessed that, because I remember you said that was coming up.
That's coming up really soon. So the ministry then that Jesus is doing, he's all up in the northern kingdom.
Right.
And what happens when he goes to the southern kingdom?
They don't like him.
They kill him.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the Gospel of John, he's back and forth a lot. He's in Jerusalem a lot. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke, he spends most of his time untouched for the most part in the northern kingdom. He goes down to the southern kingdom, they kill him. Right? And remember what he acts. And where's he from? He's from Nazareth.
Yeah.
He is.
Where's
It's in the northern kingdom. It's on the
Okay,
Sea of
yeah.
Galilee.
Yeah.
Right? So, and even you have to think, remember when he's before the high priest and Peter is in the courtyard kind of watching that part of the trial.
Yeah.
And how do they know he's a Galilean? They know they find him out really quickly he's a Galilean.
The people.
The
That
people
were
that are
there,
there in the
yeah.
courtyard around the fire,
Yeah.
because of his accent.
Really.
You speak like a Galilean.
Okay.
And so Jesus has a Galilean accent, probably. I mean, he's from there.
Right.
His disciples seem to have Galilean accents. They speak like Galileans. They are northern kingdomers through and
Right.
through. right? They're from the kingdom of Jeroboam.
It's just like blowing my mind right now.
It's just way further into the, into the future, but of course, what's the big, controversy is maybe not even the right word. What's the big deal, I guess, about Jesus? He's from the tribe of David.
Okay.
He's from the lineage of David.
Yeah.
He just lives up in the northern kingdom.
Right.
Right.
Now, okay, so Joseph is directly from David's
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why they go to Bethlehem for him to be born. They have to do the census, so they have to go down into the southern kingdom.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, now these kingdoms are defunct. Like they've not been kingdoms for a long time by the time of Jesus.
Right.
Right. Judea is a province, and then north of that, it's there's other provinces too, but it's definitely not the province of Israel.
Spread out all over the place.
Well, there's Samaria, there's Galilee, there's the Decapolis. That's a little bit further east of Galilee. It's not the province of Israel.
Right.
Right. It hasn't been Israel for a long time, but they're all northern kingdomers.
Yeah.
And it's funny that Jesus, he comes as this great. Obviously, he's the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God. He is the Word of God in the flesh, but he presents as this very powerful prophet.
Right.
Okay? And, well, if you look at the Bible, how many prophets actually do really incredible miracles? Isaiah doesn't really.
Yeah.
Jeremiah.
None.
Ezekiel has visions. Which prophets actually do miracles? Does Amos or Obadiah or Joel or
None.
Jonah, he gets swallowed up in a fish and and
spit back out.
Yeah, but that's something that's just kind of done to him.
Right.
Who are the prophets that do? Well, Moses does miracles.
Okay.
Right? Strikes with the water on the rock, splitting the sea. Okay, and he speaks directly with God. So he's one. Joshua splits the Jordan River, and you think of like the walls of Jericho. It's
Yeah.
All right. What about Samuel or Nathan? We think of prophets as if they do these great miracles, but most of them don't do anything. Like they prophesy, they speak the word of God, whether it's forthtelling what's happening or foretelling what's going to happen.
Right.
All right. And that itself is miraculous.
Yeah.
Okay. The Spirit of the Lord is upon them, and they speak these things. But really, the two prophets that do all the great miracles are Elijah and Elisha.
That's what I was gonna.
Those are the two guys that do it. And where do they live? In the northern kingdom.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, Elijah was at the Transfiguration too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yes, he was.
Yeah.
Right. We'll talk about that later on because he goes to the mountain, and so he's on the mountain, receives the word of God, the same mountain that that Moses does, and then in the Transfiguration, they're with Jesus.
Right.
But so Jesus really is going around the northern kingdom, doing all these miraculous things. That's very much like Elijah and Elisha.
Yeah.
Very specifically, the other prophets don't do stuff like that.
Right.
So, and we'll get there.
And now that brings a different perspective to, like, them mocking him for being king of the Jews.
It does, doesn't it?
Because they don't want a northern.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's even worse, right? Yeah, they don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't want to. You're southern, right? They don't want a northerner.
Yeah, they don't want a Yankee.
That's right. They don't want a Yankee. They don't want. He's not even one of us. He didn't even talk like us. Right. He's not, and so that really bothers him. And I think that Pilate, when he does that, I think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
I think
he washed his hands.
He's like he didn't really. Pilate's not a good guy, all right, but he's in that part of the narrative. He's not really characterized as like some kind of great antagonist towards Jesus,
right? And
so, but you get from the sense of the whole thing. From the whole thing, you get the sense that he's kind of bothered by the fact that they're pressuring him into doing this.
Yeah.
And so it is a way that he just kind of sticks the knife in and twists, at least to them. He gets his kind of, that he knows they really don't like that. And it's not just because they don't like him. It's because he's not even He's not even a Judean.
Right.
But of course, in the whole thing about this story is that he is.
Right. He just
He
isn't
is
from there.
He's not from there,
Right.
but he is from the tribe of David.
Right.
Right.